Good evening, folks. Let's go ahead and get started with this evening's work session. Thank you all for being here. Dr. Phillips.
I'm going to actually turn this over to Brennan, and I'm assuming Vernell as well. Have you all met Vernell? Help me with your last name. I'm so sorry. McDonald. Thank you very much. I don't know that you all have met him, but he works with HPM as well and has been a part of the discussion. Thank you, Sean, for being here. But I'm just going to turn over the update to Brennan.
Okay. Greg's on his way as well. He's having car trouble and trying to get an Uber here, but not that I'm picking Uber over taxis or anything like that. All right. So we'll start with the update on our capital projects planning. I think y'all all know who I am at this point, so I'll jump right in about kind of what we talked about last month. Was we looked and analyzed school system wide about what is the ideal capacity across the school systems using a 19-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio. So this is just kind of a refresher table of each school, current grade alignment, what the capacity is, and then what that projected 5- and 10-year enrollment is over the next 5-10 years. And this is based on the enrollment projections that Cooperative Strategies did and shared in depth last month.
Brennan, did they complete the subdivision analysis as well?
They are very close. We don't have a formal report. They were still waiting on some information from the city that they gathered late last week. Have all the information they need now, but didn't get it in enough time to complete by tonight. But they expect to have it to us next week.
You don't think that, well, it hasn't prevented you from being able to narrow down the options?
Not at this point. That was one of my specific questions was, is the high enrollment projection we're using in Liberty Park appear to be in line with what you're seeing of that subdivision yield analysis? And they said, yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Not a problem. So this month, from what the projections are showing us, from studying costs a little bit further, from looking at our different options, we've narrowed the options down to about 4 options that we think are still feasible, make the most sense, and we are recommending that these kind of 4 options are the ones that are the main basis of the decision we're recommending to you to use based on what we know at this time. So option 1 that is still on the table is current alignment system-wide with an academy facility. And this academy facility we have is proposed at Central. It's taken about 10% of the students from the high school, assuming 9 through 12 will go to that academy facility. What this does is this answers your growth basically everywhere with the exception of fully answers the growth at the high school. You still have capacity in 5 and 10 years that's going to exceed the projected growth at the high school, but what this does is kind of give some relief in that area at the high school. Now, what we're looking at specifically that's kind of changed from last month about this specific option is you'll see that the east and west projections are in line this month, and we had an option on this option to rezone a K3, rezone east and west to balance those two schools from an enrollment projection status. We found that you do not have to rezone to balance the projections at those schools over time. So at West, we've seen that the cost-wise, it makes sense to sweating. The upper board offices, there's 4 potential rooms and classrooms that we think could be utilized to help supplement growth in those areas. There was a classroom projection, new classroom addition that was proposed on the side of the West Campus, but we've seen that
You need something to drink?
Yeah, please. Sorry.
Whiskey, I think.
Service, we had like 4 people involved.
appreciate it.
Take your time.
We've got a sun drop or something around here too, if you want something more
get it.
caffeine.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
So there's a classroom addition proposed at West that was new classrooms, 9 new classrooms on the side of the campus. We've seen that there's an upper area at the board education office that's 4 classrooms that are about the size of classrooms right now. Excuse me.
Do you want me to finish that?
Yeah.
As
please.
much as I can, and
Yes.
you can fill it in. We went upstairs and we looked at the spaces that are upstairs, and this has been something that we've talked about before, just in passing, pretty much, about whether or not, and even, you know, expanding this building. So we went upstairs because the continuing issue is the fact that they need some immediate relief, if at all possible. Well, there's some space there that would provide, or could provide, some immediate relief for them. And then you'll see later on when he actually gets to that slide for West that we can even expand that conversation as far as monetarily and what the implications would mean. We met with Tony Ballou with maintenance, Sean Brennan, I can't remember who all was there, but anyway, we walked up there, talked with Kim about it. She's actually talked with a very small focus group just to get the feel for what that would be and what it would take. The primary issue being that, you know, it would need to be a summer project that we could handle in-house rather than having to bid something out over the summer and those kinds of things. We think it's doable to provide some immediate space. There's a current multi-purpose space at West, and I don't know if you're going to get into this much detail, but since you're choked up and they know I want to ramble, but the multi-purpose space, the gifted teacher space, Kim, help me with the other, there's a 3rd grade teacher that is in a place that's not appropriate, and it would provide some immediate relief, and Brennan can tie the rest of it in with the rest of the conversation.
Right,
Yeah.
so those 4 classrooms that we're looking at upstairs, they make sense to provide some immediate needed supplemental support at this time. Last month, we were looking at options that did not answer that growth at this time, this summer when it's needed, and we're showing that the projections are actually going to warrant immediate need for growth, and we already know we have capacity issues at West. So 4 additional classrooms that could be done this summer we think are feasible with a very small amount of cost. And overall, if those 4 classrooms ultimately end up being permanent classrooms, you'll see save a good bit of money from having a new classroom addition at West. So,
Kim, your folks, just, I know it's at a high level at this point, but what's the response from?
I talked to the people that would be involved that I thought immediately to move my 2 teachers out of the multi-purpose, give us back our multi-purpose room. They're all for it because they're in interior small rooms. And then I talked to another 2nd grade teacher that would allow that 3rd grade teacher in that very strange room to have a real room. And the gifted teacher could then give the EL teacher to come out of a closet. And
Okay.
I mean, they, you know, a little shell shock and have to think it through, but, and then I talked to the parent group today just to say that this is where your class was. Safety was their immediate concern.
Sure.
And Sheila and I already talked through how we would counter all those issues that have so far come up. And
But it's an idea that,
it's an idea that's been received, I mean, and I thought through, you know, on paper for us it looks great because we need that strange room that's being used as a classroom. We need it as like a conference room. We have PST and conference. We don't have any space to do anything. So really it's not to get 4 new teachers. It's just to give us elbow room.
gotcha. Thank you.
And these are offices that aren't being used, or these are spaces that aren't being used by the Board of Ed, so we wouldn't require any Board of Ed office.
There are no offices in there. Now, what it does mean for us is we have to talk about what it would mean for our professional development space, because we use the rooms upstairs a lot for that, particularly during this, well, even during the school year, but particularly over the summer. And then the Rotary also uses that space for their lunch on Fridays as a meeting space, and that would be another conversation, something we'd have to be sensitive to as far as if this is something that needs to take priority than, just the needs of where they can meet. So there are some of those things, but it's never used consistently all of the time upstairs. There's one office, Jan's office, actually across the hall.
Jan's the principal of West Extension.
And she could do it. But other than that, no.
And Brennan, I noticed just in comparing the dollar amounts from last month's meeting where that wasn't on the table, the renovation of the board offices, it was a 12.8 price tag, and this price tag is $9,900,000.
That's right. This price tag is based on ultimately having 4 classrooms this summer, but 4 additional classrooms within this building, and relocating the board office to a different location. So you have 8 new classrooms in this building, and then 3 additional classrooms that would be constructed after the completion of the new kitchen cafeteria. So what we'll show on the next slide is it kind of phases out and shows how you could get 11 new classrooms a year quicker than a new classroom addition that would have to wait on the new kitchen cafeteria to be constructed.
Do you want to just go to the next slide and show
So you're
them what you're
anticipating
referring
taking
to?
over this entire building?
That's
Is that
correct.
right?
That's correct. That's what this option would include.
In the 9.9 million?
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
The thing about the 4 classrooms, if you just look at it as a pod in and of itself, and the board maintains the rest of the building, is that we met with Tony, and also Sheila directed him to do a survey of furniture such as wardrobes and things like that at the very campus that could be temporarily moved into those rooms. So the thought process is, if the board does not move and you need those rooms back in the future, we pull all of those items out, and then the power and data and all of the items that a classroom needs, because Jan does the mobile units now with smart TVs, are already set up for that. So it's kind of, as we kind of looked at it, it's looking at it as a quick sort of fix that could be temporary, but if the board moved and we took it over, it's still part of it.
So the 9.9 million is to rehab this entire building?
It's to convert the upper 4 and then convert the main level of the board office into 4 additional classroom units. And 9.9 is the total West Campus cost. So that's also new kitchen cafeteria, that's new 3 classrooms where the existing kitchen cafeteria was, and your multi-needs and media center renovation.
As opposed to a brand-new classroom addition.
The new classroom
As it
addition
would
is
look
when
like
it jumps
this.
up to the 12.894.
Right, but this doesn't include, Nancy wants to know where the money is for relocating all the central office.
Well, that would certainly be an additional cost,
Okay.
but we would hope it wouldn't
Additional
be.
cost.
It wouldn't be. We're talking about $3 million or so. So,
Okay.
Right. This
She actually did ask that question with me this time. Good luck with that.
right. I mean, we do know that there would be cost for that, but that's why I was showing the difference, if that's even something that we want to do, or if we would know a new wing is what we
So we
feel
think
is
3 million
best.
gets another central office of similar utility? Is that what you said?
Or if all things come into play, do we rent a space for a while, possibly? And then when if Central is indeed moved to Pizitz, which is what we're assuming, at least that piece of the puzzle in one form or another,
yeah.
then there's that space as well.
Okay.
So it would just depend on, the options.
But
if they're there.
it wouldn't include, Ms. Jan's doing,
She
it
is.
wouldn't include your area with the computer system here in this office, right?
No.
Okay, that would remain in this building.
Jan and the ice machine, pellet ice machine are big draws for this.
Thanks, Brendan, sorry, we're keeping.
No problem. So one kind of potential possible solution of where the board office could move to make this work that we're looking at is the upper Board of Education would start immediately, would need to start at least planning-wise and decision-wise. We would need an answer of, are we going to move forward with that this summer?
Which, again, doesn't displace anyone other than finding the location for professional development and then, and people who use that space.
That's correct. But kind of long-term, if we were to use this building, utilize it for all new classrooms, Berry is an immediate option of where you could relocate the board office temporarily at little to no cost to house these folks that have offices in this building while the new kitchen cafeteria is being constructed, and then you could be doing renovations in this building as the 4 classrooms are still going on, but these offices would be vacated. So what we've mapped out here is the Board of Education upper level starting now, finishing by the end of the summer. New kitchen cafeteria starting as soon as we could get it done for a end of summer completion in July 2018. And then you would start the lower Board of Education renovation as soon as the upper was done, or as soon as you could relocate the Board of Education office. And then we would renovate the existing 3 classrooms that you would put inside of the old kitchen cafeteria. In the summer, when that new kitchen cafeteria got done, we would hopefully map it out so that new kitchen cafeteria was not being used, and you could go ahead and move in there and have 3 new classrooms at the same time the new kitchen cafeteria opened. So that's a total of 11 classrooms, but it gets you there by the end of July 2018, and you'll see that 9.9 number is about $3 million less than that 12.8. Now what it does gives you 11 new classrooms. It also gets your capacity to 893, which based on the enrollment projections we're showing more than takes care of your peak growth. The classroom addition that has been designed, the new classroom addition, is 9 new classrooms. So if you did 4 up here for temporary growth and then waited until the new kitchen cafeteria was done to be able to start on the new classroom addition, it would delay you about a year of this plan, would not get your growth as quickly, and would cost more. It would give you 2 additional classrooms with more capacity, but based on the projections we're seeing, even in the peak year, those classrooms would not be needed based on what we're seeing.
And Brendan, just if you go back one slide, just a couple different numbers. I noticed that the renovation of Berry, the projected cost would be $19 million. It was $16.5 last month.
So we added an additional $2.5 million to Berry. With this number, it's $63 million. If you'll recall, our funds available total between the bond issue and the reserves was $69 million. So that 2.5 could go towards Berry for additional finishes, upgrades, cosmetics if needed, or that 2.5 could be additional savings to be utilized somewhere else, potentially for a relocated new board office or a project that's down the road that's desired.
But so that's not a change in the 16.5 estimate for getting Berry online. In other words, 19.9 is 19 million isn't going to be it's not the floor.
Right.
16.5 is still the floor.
Yes.
Okay.
But
That's
that
correct.
19 does not include any modifications that need to be made for the board staff to move over there, right?
That's right. Now,
Okay, it doesn't.
one potential option could be if you wanted to move the Board of Education in, go ahead and renovate the administration area of Berry as soon as you could, of how you would renovate it for the school, and then move the Board of Education office in there and kind of phase your Berry renovations. So that you could utilize money that would ultimately be spent at Berry, and it could be in that $19 million number.
And the other difference I see from last month is on the central renovation, it was 10 million last month and 5 this month, which I like that direction.
Yeah. So that's due to last month we were using a 15% student going into the academy program. We've reduced that to a 10% just to be a little more conservative, reducing the cost of the program and just thinking that ultimately for $5 million the academy's facility could get a nice academy's facility that would serve 10% of the students from the high school.
Okay.
Option 2 is a K through 5 alignment, essentially the same as option 1, except the K5 alignment instead of the K3. You'll notice the cost is the same across this option due to what's needed at East, what's needed at West being the same regardless of which option you go in, because the numbers, even after you rezone at East, West, and Pizitz, do ultimately end up balancing about the same. So this is a K5 alignment option, but what this does is give you that K5 alignment across the system, and it shows that you can do that with the same amount of needed construction to meet your enrollment projections and growth capacity over the next 10 years.
That would require rezoning.
Yes, that's correct. You would have to rezone at East and West ultimately across the system for that Pizitz that would become your central and your third K through 5 on this side of the corridor.
But if we renovated Pizitz to be an elementary school K through 5, it's just 1.3 is the projected
Yes,
price tag.
that's correct. You still have enough capacity in that school as it is that school could be utilized as a K through 3 or a K through 5 as it currently is, and 1.3 is just cosmetic renovations to restrooms and hallways to get them up to standard.
That was all that was really initially intended for Pizitz, even if it were to stay Pizitz, was the hallway issues with walls, bringing old toilet rooms up.
I just didn't know with there being, if it goes to K through 5, the younger kids, if there was more substantial renovation that would need to be done.
K2 can stay on the bottom floor.
Okay.
The older ages can go on the upper floor, so it's just a matter of administration.
I got you. Brendan, I don't see any changes in the price tags on this from what we talked about last month.
No,
Other than what
there
we've
should
already
not be,
mentioned.
besides again, the 19 million,
Yeah.
the 5 million changes
Right.
are the only ones on option 2.
Okay.
And option 2, you'll see option 1, 2, 3, and 4 we're about to share carry the West plan of utilizing the board office now as ultimately your growth option for this campus.
Right.
So option 3 is a current alignment across the system, but at this option you're pulling the 9th grade out of the high school and moving 9th grade to Berry and 9th grade to Liberty Park Middle School based on where you are zoned. This makes the high school go to the 10 through 12. What you'll see here is this does answer 5-year growth at the high school from a capacity standpoint and 5-year projection. It does not answer the 10-year growth on what we're seeing, even pulling the 9th grade out. But this will require a substantial building program at Berry that will be costly, with the addition of a 9th grade wing to house those students at that campus. So a little different allocation of funds. There's no longer Central's offline and could be used as the Board of Education office or potential some other use that we could look at. But it would not be utilized for any housing of school in this scenario.
Brendan, I just noticed from last month, the price tag for the renovations at Berry, if there was a new ninth grade wing, it was 28.2. This is 37.
This is that additional 2.5 that's just been carried
I see.
through
I got you.
throughout, just to
Thank you.
keep the options the same of
I hear
that
you.
additional 2.5 could be utilized there.
Thank
So
you.
Brandon, if we do this, do we need additional sports facilities at Liberty Park? And we also have transportation issues too that have to factor in.
That's correct.
At Liberty Park, yes, you would, if you, those campuses, both Berry and Liberty Park, could be set up to be a 6, 7, 8, 9 with 2 different entrances. Lathan did explore that option of Berry could have a traffic loop added where 8, 9 could drop off around the other side of campus. As far as additional sports facilities, I mean, you could utilize the fields that are there at Liberty Park. Is there not a football field there?
It's a practice.
Practice field.
But that's where the transportation piece would come in, so that they could continue to participate in the programs at the high school, which is what would occur for Berry, other than the practice space.
Both ninth grade at Liberty Park, ninth grade at Berry would be transported to the high school.
Well, if that were where the practice space would be. I mean, it just depends on how it's scheduled. I mean, there may be some practices at Berry
Yeah, I hear you.
as opposed to the high school, but they would still come together. That was part of the discussion. It was why it was important for me to meet with the athletic department and get a feel for how that would work for them. And the consensus in generalization was that it was very doable, but we would certainly have to transport to make sure that they're there for those. But there wasn't the idea that they would separate out into other teams
Right.
for that.
Nor play at a junior high. They would, those ninth graders that would make sports teams, and for that matter, academic teams, math teams,
Right.
et
Our
cetera.
plan would be to keep our athletic program built the way it is.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And our math team and whatever
Yes.
other teams.
Yes.
Yes. So on that option 3, Brendan, I noticed even with Liberty Park Liberty Park Middle had those 4 grades, 6th through 9th, there's not an estimated cost.
Right. Just based on the ideal current capacity, you would have to, we kind of talked about this last month, reutilize some of those classrooms within that school that are already there. I believe it's 5 additional classrooms that science labs currently have labs and classrooms connected. So there would have to be some reutilization of spaces that aren't being used full-time all day. As far as having a class in there all the time, there might have to be some reworking of that program. But as far as additional building there, you would not have to do any additional building to have enough classrooms to house at that school.
The implications for us will be the operational costs of additional personnel and such. But again, if you move them, you have some shifting of personnel already from within, but there may be some shifting there as well, which is something we'll be investigating over the next month.
Investigating
The personnel side of this
Yeah.
and depending upon, where we,
Operations,
those kinds of things.
implications of different floor plans that
Yeah.
being presented.
Okay.
which is going to be necessary no matter what the alignment is, unless we just leave it exactly as it is.
Keep in mind about Liberty Park Middle too, Mark, is that currently Ty has part of his student body in. So with final for the building addition to his building completed yesterday, he can start assimilating those kids back into his
wing.
building product.
So you get the classrooms and some increased the classrooms will come back over.
Will they come back over this semester or just wait until the fall?
We'll wait if we can.
Yeah.
Unless we need to.
Right.
The last option that we still are looking at would be a K-5 alignment similar to option 3, Berry and Liberty Park, both are 6 through 9. The high school is 10 through 12, but this adds an academy facility at Central as well. So this is kind of a hybrid of all the options across the table as far as changes go. Would require rezoning on this side of the corridor to make them K through 5 schools, but cost-wise, this is the most costly option just due to you're doing both a 6 through 9 at Berry and at Liberty Park, but also doing an academy facility. So still $5 million allotted for that academy facility, but you are pulling 10% of your high school 9 through 12 students out of the 9s at Berry and Liberty Park and the 10 through 12 at the high school. This requires, again, a pretty great building program at Berry as far as a new 9th grade wing and new facilities, but is about $7.4 million. But the one thing it does do that the other options don't do is answers your high school growth 10 years and addresses the capacity throughout. This is the only option currently proposed that still does that, and still is somewhat close to your $69 million of funds available that could potentially be worked out to hopefully utilize some more.
So in other words, Brendan, that option 4, at least with regard to the high school, if the ideal capacity at the high school is 2,000, this option 4 is the only one that keeps us under 2,000 to 2026 or 27, assuming that our estimates are correct.
That is
Without
correct.
another building, yes.
And the high school, based on the enrollment projections, it was the one school that the peak growth was at year 10. A lot of those schools, the peak growth kind of falls in somewhere in the middle, but the high school is the one that kind of trends towards that peak growth at year 10. So it is the one school that is going to grow steadily, and that peak growth won't hit till year 10.
On a build-out of Berry, Brendan, and I know I'm asking you to speculate a little bit, but could it be built in phases? Let's assume that the decision is to move 6th, 7th, and 8th to Berry, and the decision about 9th grade is pushed.
Until after you roll off the board?
Not that, but just the 9th,
Yeah.
until we get a little bit better understanding about the traction of an academies program, how many folks would be interested in an academies program. Is that a doable concept where you build out Berry for 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then whether it's a year down the road, whenever that the decision is made to build a 9th grade wing?
Yeah. At Berry, I think it's very doable because it is the place you would build that kind of works the best is off the back of that campus. Obviously, any construction you're doing during a school year is disruptive,
right.
But from having 2 access points to that school, one to get around to the back, construction, deliveries, staging areas off the back, there's additional property owned in the back of that school. I mean, I think it's very doable. The thing that always has to be coordinated is any kind of demolition or tie-ins to your existing building, but it's doable because you would build backwards and not go up or not go into your existing building. So you could be building a wing while school's still going on.
The concept there, Mark, would be 2 lanes in and 2 lanes out on the kitchen side of Berry, which is opposite the football field.
Right.
So that would be the in and out during construction. It would impact kitchen deliveries. Obviously, that would have to be coordinated. But as Brennan says, there's a large parking area in the back that's really kind of overgrown now. That's perfect for laydown. Would be a traffic loop, have parking in the middle of it. It would take the softball field, but we have a good bit of real estate back there to move the softball field. And like you said, if we do the ninth grade academy, we kind of sketch that we developed would really, it would be a connected building, but it would have its own sort of presence and drop off.
Right.
So class could, it really takes the place of the building, I think you referred to as building H, that's not in very good shape, and it fills that kind of gap and connects it back, connecting it back.
Gotcha.
That makes sense.
It does, makes it, thank you.
So when will we have the operational numbers and everything so that we can more fully evaluate?
Well, Greg is working on those as we speak, and you tell me when you can have them ready.
You know, I'll have to go through and study the 4 options a little more. Part of it's going to depend upon,
So 2 weeks?
doing ninth grade academy.
No, when?
Get it ready. When I feel good about it.
All right, sooner than that.
Well, about that, I probably feel pretty good about them pretty close as long as I get the personnel piece worked out.
Okay.
The academy concept will need to be. You caught me at a good time. I still do. Jump on it. So.
Well, we talked about having an additional meeting in April. So if you all do decide to meet April 12th, then that would be, I would suggest we'd meet it the week after spring break so that they'd have time to review it.
Is that feasible, Greg, if we had a work session or board meeting on the 12th, the next regular meeting is the 26th?
Yeah, because some of the options are not going to require a lot of stuff. It's mostly going to be the academy piece that I think is going to be the part that I have to
You think that's good?
kind of dig into and get some input on what additional personnel requirements are going to be.
Sure.
Since, we will still be having possibly ninth grade at a location plus the academies, what's the staffing going to look like for those different scenarios.
Yeah. No, thank you for doing that, because I know it's probably hard to wrap completely around what those numbers look like. But
just depends on how far down in the weeds you
sure,
go. So.
Sure.
So we should definitely plan to do that on the 12th.
So we come back from spring break, we'll be back on the 3rd. Greg, can we get it to them by midweek so that they have time to review it and ask you any questions possibly?
That's what I'll shoot for.
So it would be 2 weeks from today, probably.
It would
Is that right?
be. It would be, and that's a week prior to.
One thing, Brennan, and I think the question has been raised maybe in here before during some of our work sessions, but just the notion of adding buildings to the high school. What are your thoughts about that? That's not obviously one of the options that you've recommended.
That's right. The high school is going to be the most, difficult, maybe with the exception of Central that we've looked at, to build on, just because of the terrain, the structure, the amount of rock, the side of the hill, the traffic. It's going to be more costly than anywhere else, just because of how difficult the construction is. There are potential areas that you could build, but you're giving up something in most every scenario.
Practice field behind the gym.
Practice field you're giving up. If you want to build on the tennis courts at the corner, obviously you have to obtain that from the city, and then the tennis courts are being lost. If you want to build in the additional property up beyond the upper parking lot, very difficult construction and surrounded by homes in that area. If you want to build on one of your existing parking areas, you're giving up parking.
Right. To house more kids, you'd lose parking while still having more students coming to the
That's
high
correct.
school.
And then do you think about your other spaces as well? Your interior spaces, your lunchroom, your media spaces, all of those kinds of things, your choir rooms, your band room, all of those kinds of theater, all of those spaces are impacted.
That's right.
As
So
well
if
as we
you're adding
grow.
an additional building or extending onto what's there, you're answering the classroom answer, the capacity issue, but you're adding more strain and stress on your hallways, your cafeteria, your lunchroom, your media center, unless you are building additionals of those duplicates in that additional building, which is more cost. Another thing to look at in here is kind of, you can see at the lower level education schools, you need growth also. So you have to do those things to supplement that growth. So finding enough funding to build at the high school would require additional funding, or potentially looking at other areas like Central to see, get an appraisal to see is their worth or value on the land, if you could find a way to take Central off the line. It would take some additional exploration for sure, but we could look into further if the ultimate desire is keep 9 through 12 together. What really hone in on cost, schedule, timeline, and what it would take.
But at least as you look at it right now, that's not an option that you guys have recommended.
It's certainly a challenge.
Yeah.
And I apologize for being late.
Oh, no problem.
Minor issues on the way here.
We heard.
It's certainly a challenge. We have looked at the property. We have looked at what the potential implications would be. I think there's been, Sean, how many different plans over the years that have been looked at? We've gone back and kind of, brought back to the table and said, okay, well, maybe it didn't work then, but how would it fit in this plan? It doesn't make sense. Really at this stage, and Brennan, I think if you go to the next slide, in looking from here to where we're going, feedback from you guys from the board's perspective of how you feel like you would want to ideally handle the high school alignment is really the point where we're at in the path forward of analysis today. How we handle that addresses what our options are. As Brennan mentioned, if you think about the first two options that were traditional 9-12 high school alignment, we found a way to identify potentially a little over $4 million of savings within the original allocated funds today. There may be a few more within that as we continue to investigate the renovations that vary that additional 2.5 million. In one of those options, Central is taken offline. If Central is taken offline and that property is no longer necessary for the future growth of the system, and a 9-12 high school is desirable for the long-term future of Vestavia, then we should look at possibly having that property appraised and looking at how those funds could supplement the savings we've identified in other locations to see if building at the current high school is a possibility. Now, all of those things are possibilities, but you also have to look at the implication of building anything at the current high school.
Right.
The traffic, the auxiliary programs and spaces, the hallways, the loss of parking, etc. Those have to be balanced against each other.
Right.
The flip side of the equation is the 6-9 alignment and having a 10-12 high school. We have options here that allow us to do that. It's really, we've got to have some feedback on which side, and I know operationally will make a difference in that equation. But as we study these even further, there are different paths you go on as you get, to one side of the coin or the other.
Well, this obviously is extremely helpful for you guys who are the professionals to be able to continue to narrow down as we think about work sessions that we've had probably from November forward discussing this. And we talked about having, I think, Sheila, you all options on the table and then pulling options off the table. And that's what you guys have been able to do for us. Thank you for that, one. And then two, I continue to be thankful to the city for their assistance in being able to get Barry. That changed the whole, as you said, Sheila, that was a change in the ballgame to be able to have that and for us to be able to consider it. And then the third thing is for us to be able to be in a financial position to be considering these things. We obviously want to, and I think we have tried to be very diligent in the process of thinking through and using a professional to help us get to the point we are now, and to be able to have, through the bonds and through the good stewardship over the years of the reserve, to be able to have these options on the table that, again, that I'm thankful that we have those. Thank you. Any other questions from us? And we'll open it up to if it's okay with you, Brendan, open it up if there are any questions or comments from folks in the crowd. Before, this is the only item on our agenda for the work session. We would just close the work session. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, he still has to do the updates on the
I'm
other
sorry.
facilities and
Sorry.
such for you.
Okay.
So for the 12th, can somebody give some thought to operational cost, any transportation issues we have, and then the relo of the central office, I think is, I know we've talked about we could move it to central, we could move it to Barry, we
Yes.
could rent. But to me, that's a big hole in this.
Yes.
So any questions to Brendan about what he's covered so far? Yes, ma'am.
Has the property that the board owns at Heights been considered in any of the plans as far as, potential BOE location? Has that?
Yes, we've discussed that before, yes. But what we were trying to do was just narrow down at this point so that we could move into that next phase of what makes sense.
Yeah, I think
But in the very beginning, we talked about, if we were dreaming, there'd be a central office in the middle of our community, which is Cahaba Heights. Preschool is something that's going to have to be addressed, not in the too near future. We've talked about that. So yes, it has been given consideration.
Generally, but no, as far as I know, Brendan, you haven't put a price tag on it, but Jerry, that may dovetail with what you just said. What would it, if we built something out there to house the board?
Rick has thrown out numbers before, I just don't know what they are.
I'd forgotten that.
And I just
Yes.
want that factored in this.
Yeah.
Kimberly, to your question, I think in the past, we've always looked at the central office as the lowest priority by far, this building. But if it makes sense and provides us classrooms a year in advance, then that's something that we need to consider. And so that's why I want to raise the priority of determining the cost of relocating the central office staff and services.
Any other questions? All right. Yeah, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Just one
Yeah.
more.
No, no.
The second high school has been taken off the options, the narrow list of options. Is there a particular reason that that's not listed any longer, or?
The cost, trying to get the money to spread as far as it can go. It was important to put it out there so that we could discuss it, so that people would know in the future what that cost would be. So once we get through the essentials of what this is, I would have to go back and look at the original amount, but have the funds to move in that direction. That's where I think at one of our meetings you all had that discussion about where would those funds come from and what would be
60
necessary
million plus, and
just for that campus. Yeah.
we just don't have that kind of borrowing capacity.
But it's certainly something to think about in the future and to, hopefully be able to one day, if that's the case, if that's what is so determined at that time. But the research has been done for what that cost would be currently, and then something to build from if necessary in the future for the school system.
Has there been any in-depth research about how it could be paid for? I know that Matt Adams provide, sort of a very high level look at that, but it was very high level. So has there been any movement to have more investigation about what if you have the growth that's expected, let's say at Liberty Park, our last frontier, if you have that kind of growth, what the additional ad valorem, how that would impact that figure and the affordability of that option?
Well, that was looked at prior, and we talked about the debt service that would be required in addition to, in order to support that, including the operational costs for that. I don't have that in front of me, but do you recall, Greg, what that?
The operational cost was going to run, I want to say, $8 million a year, and if we had the capacity and were able to finance debt service, it would be
I think this is it, Greg.
$5 million a year on top of that. Matt went through, and I don't have his numbers in front of me, but he looked at what a district-wide increase in millage would be, and I don't think that was
I guess my question is, those numbers that he provided and the analysis that's been done, did that take into account the additional ad valorem and potential sales tax for growth that's expected in Liberty Park along with the residential growth?
I think, I don't remember with precision exactly what he did. I think the issue that you bring up is a good one. The problem is all that stuff lags, and we've got to be able to fund it on the front side. And what we're dealing with here is a 10-year peak. And quite frankly, if we mortgage everything today on a bet that this stuff is right in 10 years, we lose all our flexibility across the next decade. I would prefer to find one of these that works and then sort of keep your eye on that, because we've known that Liberty Park is going to double in size since day one, and for a lot of reasons it hasn't done it yet. I think the prudent thing to do is to wait and keep an eye on it and try to come up.
As an option.
Absolutely, but just not a near term, because we've got to find a way to pay for it, and we've got to make sure that growth is coming online for certain, as opposed to
I think we get, like you're saying,
plans.
I think we get more fixed with these options, more of the student population issues fixed with these options. If we went the high school option, I think all these come off the table because we couldn't afford both.
Yeah, I've got Matt's stuff here, but I do not remember how he calculated his coverage amounts that he had on here for the additional debt service. But he does have new debt service, operating cost, together an additional $12 million a year, provided we had the capacity to go through and borrow $60 million and then be able to afford the operational cost out of there.
And the $60 million, my recollection, if I'm not mistaken, you guys correct me, that's building an athletic facility. That doesn't include property acquisition.
That's correct.
But Kimberly, you're right, of course, and we do need to keep an eye on that, whether it's 3 years down the road or 5 years down the road, where that becomes more of a front burner consideration, at least in my opinion.
And one last question.
Sure.
For the 6th through 9th grade realignment options, has there been some analysis done about the effect that this might have on students and whether that's a good, the pros and cons of aligning that way for students? Has that been talked about or analyzed in depth?
I don't know what in-depth analysis you would be thinking of, but I mean, there are always, you have middle school concepts, you have junior high concepts, and I've spoken of the fact, even in asking them to look at separate interests, your 6th and 7th grade could be a middle school feel of teams and pods and those kinds of things, and even your 8th and 9th grade could have more of a junior high pre-AP if you wanted to, whatever you needed to do, more academically aligned in that way. There are junior highs 7 through 9 all over. There are 6 through 8. There are 6-9 campuses. There's 5-8 if you wanted to. There are grade alignments that even go 5-8. As far as impact on students, you can find studies on any of that, and I have looked at many, yes, but you can find whatever you want to substantiate either. What we know is that we value greatly the middle school concept, and that our 6th graders need to be with our 7th graders, and even the impact of 8th grade. But we also know about ourselves is that we could feasibly picture and envision both of those worlds together, because we have the property at Berry to do that, if that is what is decided to do. The 9th grade is a numbers issue, is whether or not we leave 9th grade at the high school and the numbers continue to grow, and how do we do that to accommodate, or we find another alternative. You know, one of the concepts out there is that 9th grade be a standalone. Well, there are a lot of people that disagree, and those programs have more often than not succeeded, because again, 9th graders need somebody to lead and they need somebody to follow. So, you know, it's just to be by themselves takes them out of the loop. And the way we value the integration of our 9th graders in our programs, such as athletics and the fine arts and those kinds of things, finding a way to make sure that they still stay connected to those programs has been a significant conversation that I have had with the athletic department and with the fine arts department in particular. But, you know, as far as a junior high concept, those are all over the nation, 7 through 9. We just know that we would like our 6th graders to stay with our 6, 7, and 8, and how do you marry those worlds? So as far as in-depth study, I don't know what questions you would think to ask, other than what do we value, what do we know about 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, and 9th graders, and how do we make sure that the value we place on what we want their experiences to be ends up being designed in that way, no matter what facility or what campus they are on. That is the more significant conversation there.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
In the two options here of going to the K through 5 for East and West, and then using Pizzitz as K through 5, there's not a difference in cost in doing that or leaving them K through 3 and putting 4 and 5 at Pizzitz. So from an operational and academic standpoint, do we have thoughts on which of those is more desirable, the K through 5 or
Not necessarily. The K through the whole point of aligning K through 5 would be about aligning resources. You know, the way we go about our professional development, the expectations, making sure that those things are aligned as well for students, and that those experiences. Central is a factor in that conversation, being just a 2-year experience. You know, a lot of people suggest that, you know, there's not enough time to build family when you're only there for 2 years. And then really it's about community and feedback, and people saying, I would love for my child, let's say, to stay at East or at West until, or I'm happy, here's the response I've gotten. What do you think if we needed to rezone in order to do that? That'd be fine as long as my child got to stay where they are until 5th grade. Well, you'd have to have some sort of grandfather clause or something in there so that you're not just shifting. It'd have to be for new enrollees and such and those kinds of things. But it's primarily for the alignment of what we do and ensuring, again, we've talked so much about aligning experiences. And then Central is, you know, it wasn't intended to always be a 4-5 school, and we know that if we did a 3-4-5, or if we just added a grade, that there wouldn't be space at Pizzitz to do that. So you'd have to shift in order to balance out the numbers. Does that answer your question? Kimberly, did I answer your question sufficiently, and does that help you? Okay.
Other questions before Brennan goes to the construction update? All right, Brennan, do you have time to do this before we get started with the 6:30 meeting?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Roll through it.
It's 6:30.
This is the easy one. So Liberty Park, we achieved substantial completion earlier this week, so got a sign off from the state that project's substantially complete. They'll now turn towards the punch list stage, just working out those minor touch-up issues and finishing those areas for ultimately use by Ty and his group. So I think they can move in as soon as they're ready. There is one thing in our futures.
Yeah, it turned out wonderful.
So just working through completion of that. Storage building's complete and turned over as well. The cafeteria expansion was already turned over in a previous phase, so that building's now ready to be used.
Great.
Just some pictures of the exterior, flip side down, all the brick, roofing's complete. Interior spaces are cleaned up, so it turned out well.
That's great. Thank you all for all the work that you all did for that.
At Cahaba Heights, they are still progressing. The main critical item right now is the gym floor. It's kind of driving the rest of the schedule. Have started installation of the floor. The floor's already installed, but it's now sitting and getting ready to be painted, acclimating to the conditions inside of the gym that have to be conditioned properly for that paint to stick, and it's got to stick. So they're waiting on that to be done before bleachers can be installed, acoustical panels, finishes, and in the rest of the areas. That's the first phase. It's the main critical path of that schedule right now. Cafeteria expansion's already been turned over, as you know. The second phase, which is the new Media Center, new classroom addition, we have started the advertisement for that project. Pre-qualifications are due tomorrow, so we'll be reviewing those for that project to be bid soon and started this summer. Some pictures of the exterior. Stone's complete, EFIS is complete, the window system's complete, all the roofing's complete. So contractors now focusing on cleaning up the exterior with sidewalks, landscaping. Inside you can see the floor has been laid. It now gets sanded and gets painted. Paint's on the walls, on the ceilings. Just focusing towards finishes at this point. Had an above ceiling inspection earlier this week that went well and passed.
Alicia, looks good?
Oh, it's good. We're excited. Good. For that May opening, aren't we?
That's good.
At East, still coming out of the ground at the East. As always, rain is an issue when you're coming out of the ground and have to pump water out of footings. But the footings are now complete, turning towards pouring of the concrete slab, underground rough-in for utilities in the kitchen. So the next phases will just be getting the concrete slab poured, getting steel erected, and walls will start going up here in the next month. Concrete slab should be poured in the next few weeks. Main issue there is just continued wet weather that's hindered pouring of concrete. Some pictures at East. You can see the stones being placed for the concrete slab, so starting to take shape. All the footings and foundation walls are complete, so should be coming up soon. At West, we talked about in the presentation that the critical thing here is kind of two components. Have the multi-needs renovation that's getting ready to be started. Have an advertisement started for that project. So getting it started, bidded, awarded, contract executed by the start of school or end of school, start of summer, to be complete by the end of summer is the critical thing right now. Just working through that. On schedule right now for that to occur. So looking good there. The other component of that is if we're going to renovate the upper 4 rooms, need to decide rather quickly on that to decide, are we going to put that as part of the multi-needs project, or are we going to handle that through outside contracts based on the scope that is ultimately desired, but making a decision on that pretty quickly to get started on the same time frame as the multi-needs renovation is critical right now. Not quite as an extensive project, just in looking at the spaces of what's needed in those upper 4 rooms, but getting a decision made so that the construction can be completed is the main goal there.
So what's the process for this, Sheila? Do you make a recommendation on that issue?
On the classrooms?
Or, yeah, any of this.
Well, what we're hopeful for, if we decide on the classrooms, that's not necessarily something that you all need to vote on. No, if we are able to do it in-house. Now, if it were something, of course, that we determine is going to be more extensive, and they're still working on the details of that right now. So I'm waiting on everyone to do their part to tell me, okay, this is what it's going to take, this is what it's going to cost, this is what it's going to be like. If we can do it in-house, no, that's not necessary. That's just getting the rooms equipped for them in the way that they need to move on. But they're working on that right now, and hopefully in just the next, I mean, when he says pretty immediate, we mean in the next several weeks. But there was some conversation that needed to take place about it. We need to know cost. We need to know what it's all. Pardon me?
It's not a voting item, right?
It is not a voting item.
And then options 1, 2, 3, 4.
Those are a voting item.
Those are a voting.
Those are a voting item. And we had to narrow down to these in order for you all, I mean, I will make a recommendation. That's another reason why an additional meeting you all may decide is necessary.
Gotcha.
To get the rest of the information and bring it together.
Okay.
Yes, I'm not making that decision by myself, if that's what you're asking.
Nancy will.
Kim, just
It'll be before Mark rolls off.
in talking with some of the teachers who have know about this renovation this summer, they seem very excited about the.
Yeah, they're excited, and the people that it affects internally are excited.
Good. Okay.
I mean, it just gives us elbow room. I mean, it just gives us breathing room.
Good. Any other questions before we take a 5-minute break and come back for our regular meeting? Okay. Meeting adjourned. Good evening, folks. Thank you all for being here. I'm sorry that we ran late with our work session, so thank you for your patience, you folks who have come for the 6:30 meeting. We've got on the board an amended agenda. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? And then we've seen the minutes from our February 22nd meeting. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Dr. Phillips.
All right. Well, first of all, our wrestling team, if you all will stand, our wrestlers who are here this evening. This is becoming routine for this group of young men. We are so very proud to have our state champions in wrestling. Unfortunately, Coach Adams couldn't be here with them. He is out ill, actually. I didn't ask him for permission to suggest that to you, but that's the only reason that he is not here. Otherwise, he would be. As a matter of fact, I think he tried to come, and he was told he didn't need to come. So, Jeff, if I can turn it over to you. Thank you guys for being here. We are so incredibly proud of you. A first-year coach with us to carry on the tradition of winning and to do it in such a stellar fashion. We're so proud. Jeff, do you want to say a couple words about this team and the year? And
it was, I guess, coming into the year, we probably were not favored to win it. These young men just worked their fannies off every day and put us in a place. And last year we won it on the last match. This year we had it sewed up very early Saturday morning, and it was a great feeling, and just fun to watch these young men grow and get better every day.
Yeah, there was I don't know if you saw the number spread, but it was significant, and they held on and did so well, and it was one of those wins where you say not even, they weren't even close. So we're so proud. Thank you all for coming and letting us recognize you and for spending your evening. Thank you. Before you go, tell them your name and what grade you're in.
I'm Jack, and I'm in 11th grade.
I'm Bryant, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Birch, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Douglas, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Nate, I'm a sophomore. I'm Pete, I'm a sophomore.
I'm Pat, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Jim, I'm a freshman.
Excellent. Thank you all. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Okay. All right.
It is a special pleasure, having been a former debater, as I'm sorry that David Powell isn't here tonight, to recognize several of our high school debaters and individual eventers who are going to be representing the state of Alabama at the national tournament this summer. So their coach, Nate Conley, would you step forward, and with the students who are here, step forward as well. You guys can line up there. These are not children who were embarrassed to speak publicly. And as a result, because every debate and individual event category is so specialized, I'm going to ask each child to introduce him or herself and tell us what event you'll be doing at the national tournament. Okay.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Reddy. I'm a junior, and I'll be doing informative speaking at nationals this year.
Hi, I'm Maggie Rogers. I'm a senior, and I'll be doing dramatic interpretation and prose.
Hi, I'm Rachel Ding. I'm a junior, and I'll be representing Alabama in Lincoln Douglas debate.
Hi, I'm Rahul, and I will be doing PF along with my partner Joey Compton, who couldn't be here. He's on the college bus tour.
What is PF?
Public forum debate.
Okay. There's a lot of acronyms in debate, and we all know what that means up here. And so would you speak just a little bit about the tournament this summer and where the students will be traveling and presenting?
They will be traveling a nice 10 miles to downtown Birmingham. This year, the city of Birmingham is hosting nationals. So it seems like every 4 years they ask us to host it because we do such a fabulous job. And so we have people, like 4,000-ish kids that will all congregate in the city of Birmingham downtown in June.
Right, you know next year will be like in Hawaii, so, because the year that I went, one year I went, it was in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and the year before it was in San Francisco, so it was, I drew the short straw. Congratulations, we are the school with the most students representing
from that tournament.
From that tournament, Alabama.
Individual events and debate at that tournament. There's also Congress at a different tournament, and some people went there. But from that, we qualified 5 people, but 4 teams out of the 13 spots. So that was really, really good.
That is great.
25 teams competed.
Congratulations. I hope I'm going to come see y'all this summer.
So we have more kids participating in the tournament than Mount Brook does?
I think we both have 5.
We're tied.
Congratulations. And also, Casey Harlan, also co-debate coaches with you as well as forensics and speech and all of that. So when I say debate, that means a lot of different aspects of public speaking, right? So I always want to recognize that. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you guys. Thank you for being here.
To be able to recognize yet again the finest of athletes and the finest of academians, and just to be able to the work that goes into this, the coaches, the students, parents who support every single one of these students. Wrestling tournaments, y'all, I've been to a few. Those are long, all of them, they're long days, a tremendous amount of work and tenacity and strength, whether it is in muscle and whether or not it is an aptitude. In either way, it's just the development and the work that you all put into this. It just makes us so very proud. It makes all of the other work come into play for what we want for you and the outcomes that we want for you. So thank you so much for being here. You all are welcome to stay for the rest of the board meeting if you would like, but you certainly do not have to. So thank you for being here.
Take them out, Coach Eagers. Thank you, guys. ACP.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you all. Financial statement?
All right, the information in your packet tonight is for the February financial statement. I'm happy to report that as of the end of February, we're at 94% of our budget for local ad valorem that has been collected, $32.5 million. Last year we were at $30 million, just a hair over $30 million, and that was 90%. Also like to go ahead and say as of today we are 1.4 million away from hitting our entire budget for the year in ad valorem. Normally, from April through September, we will average somewhere between 250,000 and 400,000 per month. So we're looking at, if everything stays on track, we should come in between 700 to maybe $1 million above what we have budgeted for the year.
That's fantastic.
We're looking good on that. On expenditures, this year we're at 43.5% of what we have budgeted. Last year we were at 43.2%. So we're pretty much on track with expenditures at this point. All the board bank accounts have been reconciled at this point. And I got a few other things to go over. I'll give y'all an update on the Jefferson County 1 cent sales tax. We just had the court ruling on that they can proceed with refinancing those original warrants that had been issued at the point where those have been refinanced and they know what the debt service is. They will have an idea what the percentage is or what amount they will make available to the schools. That money is distributed based upon ADM to all the boards of education in Jefferson County, and currently we're right at about 6%. So whatever they designate to be the portion going to the schools, we will get about 6% of it, depending upon what ADM or what enrollment is for the year that they calculate off of. Having said all that, for them to go through and refinance, pay off the bonds, get all this done, it's probably going to be 2018-2019 year that we start to see the revenue from that. It's estimated that if it is the $18 million figure, will come in at about $1.2 million. And just coincidentally, in 2023, our debt service goes up by about $1.5 million a year. So that was built into the original calculations for our warrant payments when we issued the $69.6 million in warrants, that we would start out with a lower payment for the first 5 years. Part of the thinking was this would be settled by then. Those funds would either be available or we would have had regular growth in ad valorem to pick up and cover that increased payment.
And Greg, with that decision, do we get a lump sum payment for it? So it's just going forward that
right.
on an annual basis, the estimate
right.
is
1.2. 1.2 based upon the $18 million for schools. One other good thing about money right now, I'll be coming to y'all with a budget amendment at the next board meeting. We're receiving an extra $233,000 from the state. It's called current units money, and they make that, if the money is available in the trust fund, they make that money available to school systems that have shown a significant growth in enrollment from the prior year. They always fund us based upon what our enrollment is for one prior year. For example, or in the case of this year, we're funded for ADM of 6,940 students. Our actual enrollment right now is over 7,100 students. So this extra $233,000 is to kind of help us bridge the gap that we have for this year. But that money will be budgeted for salaries and benefits in the foundation program. So, and the only other thing I have is next month you will also be getting a bid. We've just put landscape maintenance bid out, and we should have the bid results in by then for y'all to go through and approve. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you. I recommend that the board approve the financial statement for February 2017. Board bank accounts have been reconciled through February 2017.
You've heard Dr. Phillips' recommendation concerning the financial statement. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Okay. Hold on, Brandon, excuse me. Item 6, consent items. I recommend that the board approve the following consent items: out-of-state and overnight trips, disposal of property, and off-campus facility usage requiring liability coverage, please.
Sheila's made this recommendation concerning consent items. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
The only thing I would offer up is an explanation of the addition of the off-campus facility usage and why we would ask for board approval on that. There's been a change through ATBE and Dwight Hester's office, and what they are requiring of us came about when we were asking about the usage, I think, of the church near Cahaba Heights for this parking, I guess, during one of the, was it during the voting? I think maybe it was, but there's been a change with ATBE, and they have said that we've been advised by Jason Harp, correct? Is that who advised us as well?
Dwight Hester said that with us requesting liability coverage for another premises or someone to be listed as co-insured or co-covered on there, that they needed to have proof of board approval, an agenda item that the board had approved for whichever school to be using these facilities off campus for them to be able to legitimately cover it under the auspices of ATPE. Just it's coverage for them to make sure that the board was aware and that it was an official and sanctioned function that the facilities were going to be used for.
So these two on the consent item list for tonight are it's Sanford for graduation and Philadelphia Baptist Church for parking.
Yeah, that's where overflow parking goes from Cahaba Heights when they have an evening event. So that's what that's on.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Okay. Item 7, business. Item 7A, I recommend that the board approve the Harris East School Payments Participation Agreement as submitted.
You've heard Sheila's recommendation concerning this Harris East School Payments Participation Agreement. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
Just that for quite some time, we have been working to get online payments available. And this is a company that Greg, we talked about E-Harris, we work with them already on some other areas.
Well,
and
they are the company that now owns the company that does all the financial and payroll software that's used throughout the state of Alabama by boards of education. It was originally McAleer, then it became CSI, now they've been bought out and it's Harris. This will allow us to take online payments. Specifically, we're getting this where we can use it for registration this year. It's used by quite a few systems in the state. Since they've written our financial software, it integrates seamlessly with the financial package. So that's why we're going with this product.
Good. Test it.
Tell them what happened last year.
Mr. Bennett?
everybody knows.
Tell them what happened last year. We don't want to repeat that.
Mr. Boone, have you looked at the agreement?
Yes, sir, I have. Greg and I have worked on it since December. And it's fine from a legal standpoint.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Greg, thank you for drilling down on that. And any other questions, discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Item 7B, I recommend that the board approve the purchase of classroom furniture for the completed addition of Vestavia Hills Elementary Liberty Park from Interior Elements LLC as submitted.
Sheila's made this recommendation concerning the classroom furniture at Liberty Park Elementary. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Ty, what are your thoughts on this?
We're real excited. We worked very hard on picking out everything. We wanted, up to date, and we're more of active learning concept. Everything's a lot lighter, can be reconfigured now, so I think it's going to be very, very nice. And we work with this company on some other projects, and they do a really good job. So,
price tag is reasonable in terms of what you've shopped around for.
Well, 3 manufacturers of the furniture that's listed on here, KI, Scholarcraft, and All Steel. Those prices come off the state bid list.
Okay.
And Interior Elements does have contracts to represent all those firms through the state. So yes, these are good prices.
Okay.
And we have significant discounts because of the volume, I believe.
So this
from
is
the
a
bid price.
firm located in Mississippi, but we've done business with them,
Yeah,
so we're,
they
I think
have
they're.
worked quite a bit with Amanda on some lunchroom furnishings and different things, and they're reputable.
They've worked with us throughout the
Did they
district
do a good
many
job for you,
times.
Amanda?
What do you think?
All right, any other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Item 7C, I recommend that the board accept the quote for coverage of maintenance vehicles from Alabama Trust for Boards of Education as submitted.
You've heard Sheila's recommendation concerning the coverage for maintenance of vehicles. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion?
It's just insurance for maintenance vehicles. We need to have coverage, and Greg put it back out, put an RFP out to make certain that we were getting the most for our money, and this is, the ATBE came back with the lowest bid.
And I will say, this is not something that we are required to seek quotes on or put out for bid. This was done strictly to go through and see what was available in the market right now. ATBE is also the organization that covers our buses for us, so we already have a history with them for vehicle coverage.
Right. And they provide coverage up for other things as well, not just the vehicles.
Yeah, the other arm of ATBE furnishes the board liability coverage and has for decades.
And is it your sense that ATBE provides this type of coverage for other systems?
They provide it for not only other systems, but I believe counties and municipalities can participate in their program also.
So not just boards of education?
Right.
I got you. Mr. Boone, your thoughts on the transfer of this risk to ATBE? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's my understanding that the specifications were the same by all the proposers, and they had the best price, and we've dealt with them ever since they were formed.
Yes, sir. And the coverage limits for the maintenance vehicles are the same coverage limits that we have for the buses?
Correct.
Okay.
And in fact, those are the limits according to Lucy Sellers, who directs that program for ATBE. Those are the same limits they write for any vehicle they cover, no matter what type of organization it is.
And Mr. Boone, I think we went through this when we placed the bus coverage with ATBE, if I'm not mistaken. Are you okay with the coverage limits that are provided for the maintenance vehicles that we're talking about tonight?
That's a question that gets outside the legal box.
Okay.
My personal view is I believe in high limits, but these are sufficient.
Yes, sir.
And we got Lucy to weigh in on the coverage that we have.
Correct.
And it's, again, consistent with the limits we have on our bus coverage.
It is exactly the same limits that they have done. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Okay. Item 7D, I recommend that the board approve the VHHS course as submitted, please.
You've heard Dr. Phillips' recommendation concerning another new high school course. This one is Russian, I believe. Is there a motion to approve?
This is for our hacking class.
Is there a motion to approve the new course?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions or discussion?
This is a dual enrollment class. It started with a discussion. We have a student who that is the native language, and they asked about us teaching Russian, which of course we do not do. Finding a Russian course was quite the feat. Brooke Brown worked on this for quite some time. She's worked with parents for actually probably about a year or so, but we have other dual enrollment classes naturally. So Sanford, we are working with them on an agreement very similar to the agreement that we have with Jeff State in our dual enrollment classes, so that the student can enroll at Sanford in their class, and we partner, and then we'll accept the credit. But you have to accept the course so that we can officially designate it on the student's transcript if the course requirements are successfully met, just like any other dual enrollment. But because we didn't have a dual enrollment course description and needed to turn to the state for that, that's what you have before you. So it's a dual enrollment course that we do not teach, that Sanford will, and our students will be able to enroll.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? This next item with the Superintendent Evaluation Services Agreement, you all know that under the BOE's contract with Sheila, the board is to evaluate her each year. The last 2 years, we used AASB, Alabama Association of School Boards, to help us with the evaluation process, including the presentation of the evaluation results. As you remember, Susan Salter comes to do that. My suggestion is we use AASB again. A proposed agreement with AASB is the evaluation services agreement that's attached to the agenda. Mr. Boone has reviewed the agreement, and you're fine with it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Last year, the AASB tool we used involved an evaluation by the 5 board members. In addition to my suggestion that we use AASB, my suggestion is that we this year use the AASB tool that includes evaluations by the BOE, the 8 principals in the system, and the directors in the central office. AASB's presentation of the evaluation results would be tentatively scheduled for April 26th, but depending on what else is on the agenda perhaps for that meeting, it may be that we push it to a meeting in May. Our regularly scheduled meeting in May is May 17. So whether it happens on May 17 or between the April 26th and May 17 meeting for the presentation by, I think it'll be Susan Salter from AASB. So again, my suggestion would be, and Mr. Boone help me with this because I know it doesn't come necessarily as a recommendation from Sheila, but is that we use the AASB for the evaluation process, we use the evaluation tool that I mentioned, and that we enter into this agreement attached to the agenda. Does anybody have any questions about that? Mr. Boone, do I just open it to a motion, or is that a motion from me?
You put a motion from one of the members of the board, but I want to remind the board members that contractually you're obligated to perform an evaluation.
Right.
So,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Certainly, superintendent is not going to recommend her own evaluation,
exactly.
But
right.
So it would be appropriate for one board member to make the motion.
Right. Is there a motion to approve the suggestions that I have made?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
All right. Item 8, personnel. I recommend that the board approve the following personnel actions: retirements, resignations, transfers, supplements, and employments, please.
You've heard Sheila's recommendation concerning personnel. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. My updates are not very many. I'm going to turn it over to Jane Marie in just a moment to do a brief presentation, then also Whit and Jan are working together just to show you some things that they have been working on. First of all, April 12th, an additional meeting.
Do we want to decide now or wait to decide whether that's a regular meeting or a board or a work session.
Okay.
Which do you have a sense
I think
now?
it needs to be a work session where all the data is presented to us, and then we have a vote at the regularly scheduled meeting.
So the schedule would be April 12, work session, April 26.
Yes.
We
Regular
would
board
do
meeting.
the vote. Okay.
And then, as you just said, May 17th board meeting, so you'll want to note that. Personnel meetings are currently going on. J. Marie and Mike have been working with our principals to, we do this every spring, to project for the next school year. So they are currently having those. That is just for your information, nothing significant about that other than the planning that is going into it. And of course, some of those things, and looking forward. One of the things that I will mention is there was some conversation as the legislators went into this session was whether or not, I don't know if you all remember, but last spring at the last hour, maybe it was in the summer, we got word that the ARI funding, which is part of that funding that helps us fund our reading coaches, although some of those are locally funded, might be pulled again. But the answer to that is no, it is intended to stay in place, and so that's also quite a relief for us as we plan for personnel. Our reading coaches, instructional coaches are very important to what we do in the school district, but personnel meetings are occurring just for planning, and certainly as people are making decisions about retirement this year and what will be needed at each of the schools. It gives us an opportunity to evaluate where our personnel are and as we move forward. We had a wonderful meeting with Help the Hills on Monday evening, just trying to engage all of the parties with Help the Hills and put it out there to the community. Again, several different entities, as you all know, coming together as one to combat the drug and alcohol problem. Kim being here, she actually helped lead that effort, met with the mayor, Julie Ellis, and myself in getting that going, and he was on board, and we're very appreciative yet again for the city being a part of that and allowing us to take over the work session for that event. So very grateful for that. I'm going to go to on the heel. I'll give the details of this stuff and then I'll let them talk and then I'll be done.
You work Monday night just in celebration, or you want to say?
Sure. I could not attend Monday night because I was celebrating Peter Brash. The only assistant coach ever. Mountain Brook has never had one. The only assistant coach to ever be inducted into the Alabama Hall of Fame. And he was. And Peter has just, he has been a dear friend, a longtime coach to all of us, influenced so many students and players. And it was an absolute joy to be there and celebrate him along with several others who were inducted this time. It was so much fun in front of him. Each person who's inducted into the Hall of Fame has a flag bearer of the High School Athletic Association carrying the flag in front of them, and his was Bruce Evans, longtime coach for us as well. And so it was just fun to be with them and celebrate, and table after table of people who were there because of the impact he has made. So that's where I was Monday evening. Yes, very proud.
Down there too.
Yep. It was a great evening. Not only did the Supreme Court rule on the 1.18 million, but we also had the tax renewal, and that is behind us and successful across the county, which was a big deal financially for all of us. And so we're very grateful for our community for turning out for that vote and approving the renewal of those taxes and what that's going to mean and allowing us to move forward. And then just the other thing I have before J. Marie gets up and talks about surveys is the legislative session. We have actually had several times when I have been able to be in contact with our legislators to influence what was going on in Montgomery, and very thankful, as I've said many times, to our legislators for getting our input and for allowing that to help them make decisions as they move forward that impact our schools. J. Marie, I've asked her to, I know that you have received a few questions about the surveys that went out to assist us with our evaluation process. So I've asked her to take just about 5 minutes and refresh you on that and why and how and what we expect from that. Mr. Boone, if you want one as well. So she's going to share that
What
with
you're having
you.
in front of you right now is the original PowerPoint that we used in November of 2016 when we brought together a fairly diverse group of educators across our district, teachers, administrators, counselors, special education, art, all areas of the curriculum represented, to discuss the opportunity that we were given to create and design our own district evaluation. And so what you have in front of you is the original information that we shared with them, and it was the thing from which we built back from as we created our evaluation, really for our teachers. And so all of those voices were represented. What you'll see in here on the second page, and I'm not going to go through every single slide, but the original intent of this was to really provide opportunities for teachers to grow in their practice. What we had in the state of Alabama did not amount to much professional growth. It was a lot of self-assessment that was quickly done because it was a laborious process. There was this disconnected professional learning plan that came from that. The evaluation felt very stale in its approach. And what we found when we sat there with giving us this opportunity was that teachers were so excited about what they were doing. We offer so much professional development. They wanted to be able to really grow and show how they've grown. And so there are three pillars. We made connections to the strategic plan, to the Alabama Quality Teaching Standards, to Advanced Ed. The Elliott, which we had just been using in our district as part of a tool from the Advanced Ed group, the Code of Ethics. So we went through all of those, and what you'll see, and the pages aren't numbered, but it's about maybe 6 or 8 pages in, there were non-negotiables from the Alabama State Department of Education that we had to have in our evaluation process: a professional commitment piece, a professional practice piece, and an impact on engagement and learning. And those are the 3 pillars that they refer to. We broke into 3 committees. Teachers chose which committee that they wanted. We had Cindy Eccles was leading the group on engagement and growth. Ethan Joy, who is a teacher at Pizitz, was leading the group on professional commitment. And Jennifer Brown, a teacher at our high school, led the pillar of professional practice. And we broke out over several meetings, side work, side committee meetings, all along to design our final product. And if you'll flip another couple of pages, under professional commitment, this is a self-assessment and professional learning goal piece. And that was something that was sort of similar to what we did with the previous state, but we pulled the very best pieces from that and connected to the Alabama Teaching and Quality Teaching Standards, the Advanced Ed Standards for Teaching and Learning, and our teachers actually created the self-assessment itself and the design of it. Then on to the next piece, the second pillar, which is professional practice. This is where teachers would be taking opportunities to put together portfolios of their professional learning. It also included formal unannounced observations, which was one of the non-negotiables from the State Department. And in those designing of that, we came up with something that we called the professional showcase. We gave teachers lists of things that they would want to put into their professional showcases. And because of the way that we're housing all of this in our Google Drive, teachers are able to upload student work, student videos, all kinds of lesson plans. It's amazing what you'll see when you look at the professional practice piece in this evaluation. It's so far deeper than anything I think our original committee even thought could happen when we decided that we could house it internally on our Google, in our Google folders. The final piece, the impact on engagement and growth, is actually the piece that speaks to surveys. This is also a non-negotiable that we would need to survey students as teachers and parents, and for us at the leadership level, our constituents, for us as administrators at the central office or directors, we would be surveying either teachers, principals, reading coaches, gifted teachers, whatever groups that we work with, we would be surveying those groups. And then, of course, looking for data sources at their grade level. That could be Aspire benchmarks, it could be EasyCBM benchmarks, it could be a variety of measures that they are doing that, but this house survey works into that. And then you can go on to see how we came up with the rating components and all of that. The designs of the survey actually began in the spring as we were working toward that Cindy Eccles was the person who is leading that group, and at the end of the actual design process, we had lots of examples of surveys. We looked at things that we've used in the past. We looked at samples that other districts were using, and Ty Arundel actually spearheaded the elementary and upper grade survey, pulling that together. Andy Carpenter worked on the 6-12 student survey based on all of those pieces and parts that had begun in the spring, because when we got to the end of the school year, we still had some work to finish. And so we met that summer, last summer at East. I can remember they were waxing the floors. We were all a little crazy after we left there from smelling the wax on the floor, but we stayed there for several hours and worked on designing those last pieces, which included those surveys for students. There's a K2 survey that's designed specifically, there's a 3-5 survey, and there's a 6-12 survey, and they are all aligned with Advanced Ed standards, Alabama Quality Teaching Standards, and ultimately, that information, when a child or a parent takes these surveys, that information goes straight to that teacher's Google Drive, and she or he is the only person seeing that. The survey is there for professional growth. The questions are designed so that a teacher can make decisions about his or her practice and how he or she can improve. And so that's a very important part, we feel like. It's not evaluative in that someone is looking at someone's surveys and saying, test, look what someone's writing about you. Those are written and designed for teacher reflection and teacher growth. We're very excited at the district level to have a new administrator survey that actually Mike and I designed based off of the teacher one that we felt like all directors could use regardless of whether CMP, where you have a different constituent group than, say, Director of Curriculum Instruction. So Amanda would be sending that out to managers and other people with whom she works in her department. Meredith DeFore would be sending that out to special education teachers and administrators and her. So we wrote this survey for that, and we're all very excited about getting those answers back. The way the data will come is very, very user-friendly. Jan Garfinkel sleeps about an hour a night because she is constantly moving around and building these folders from things that we are designing on the other side of the technology. And so we're just super excited about what we feel like that can provide for teachers. We've never asked that for students to give us that kind of designated information. I know teachers have always asked students questions, what did you like, what could we have done differently, but this is a very systematic way of collecting that data and moving forward. And as the whole process this year has been, there are parts and pieces of it that we need to revisit. You know, we're going to sit down after the survey's closed and say, what questions maybe do we need to rephrase, or what questions did we miss whenever we put this together? Because, you know, when you're designing it and you're all excited and it sounds like a good question, but then on the other side, when we start getting our feedback, did it really give us the information that we were looking for? So as with all of this summer when we have admin retreat, we'll be able to step back and say, what parts of this worked, what parts of this didn't, and we actually will probably end up surveying the teachers as well, because we want them to have gone through the whole process. So we will probably survey for them at the end of the year, beginning of the school year, to kind of decide what adjustments need to be made moving forward. Questions?
There were people, Jen Marie and Jan, who received, I think, surveys about administrators or teachers for schools that they didn't have kids in. So, you know, a principal at the high school or an assistant principal at the high school has a survey sent to a parent who doesn't have a kid at the high school. Can y'all explain what happened with that and the fix?
I'll be glad to explain to it. We used our new notification system to do that we were working on, and it wasn't that it was sent to the wrong, there was only one that was sent to the wrong one, and the reason why was because on the computer when we were putting it in, we didn't realize, we had some of them set to go off at a certain time because we wanted to try out how it went out at 12 o'clock, how it went out at 2 o'clock. We didn't realize that at that point when I was working on, in fact I was working on Liberty Park Elementary sending theirs out, all it did was tag the name of where that school was, because when Andy Carpenter's went out, I was in Liberty Parks, but it just looked like it came from that school. It didn't really come from that school. I can assure you where it went. The only one was wrong. I had one that went wrong because I was working on the high school And Casey and I talked about it today because it was Casey's. And what happened was, and I knew that it happened when it did because we had another point at that point where we had to swap from Vestavia Hills High School parents. And all of a sudden, I remembered we missed that glitch of that, and that's when he went to Casey's, and then I immediately sent it Casey's on to her parents.
But you couldn't retract it at that point.
Right.
You couldn't take that back.
But I will say, though, that the parents, I can look and see, and no one from the high school went in and did that. If they did, I can easily retract that part of it.
Okay.
What Casey will get in her folder will be strictly her parents.
I see.
And the same with the ones at the high school.
And you'd like to think that if like I don't have any kids
Right.
at Vestavia
Exactly.
West anymore, if I had gotten a survey about Kim, I would recognize that's
exactly.
not my time to
Exactly.
survey that.
One of the things too, though, it was a great learning experience for Whit and I both, because we realized at that point, which normally when that mass notification comes out, it's only going to come out from their schools. And if it comes out from the board, it would be as Vestavia Hills City Schools. But we realized that we could change up the part and make it look like it came from that particular school, just to make it look more, we wanted it to be where rather than the principal or the assistant principal sending it out and saying, please take this survey on me, we just felt that it would be better that if it came out as we're in our evaluation process, we would love for you to fill out this survey. That information only will go to the principals and assistant principals. Nobody else can see it. Everything's locked as far as the information.
So Tyler doesn't see Dexter's survey
No,
results?
sir. He can only see his.
Or any teachers either.
He cannot see any teachers in his school. He cannot see any assistant principals. He can only see what is put in his folder.
So just it's again, like you said, January, a self-evaluation.
It's absolutely for
self-critique.
growth purposes.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I will tell you too, I've had a lot of teachers since the high school, we've been doing the high school kids, and a lot of high school teachers have been emailing me wanting the results right away. That's a bigger process because they do 200 students, and they all don't do them at the same time. So it takes me a little while to be able to, I have to take it in a spreadsheet, move it all around, pull out just their data to go in their folder. But they're really excited because they had it previously, and they love the feedback on what those kids are saying. And so I think it's, we've never had this before, and it's huge. I've done Educate Alabama when I was in the classroom, and I can tell you there was nothing that we ever got out of Educate Alabama as a teacher. This is unbelievable what it can do for the teachers, what their evaluation on what they are going to be able to see and carry back to for their teaching. I mean, it's just amazing what these kids are saying to the teachers about, and so those teachers have already come to me and they are wanting to see this next, we've already done it once, so this is their second time.
Do you have a sense as to what the response rate is? Just in terms of percentage, it went to 100 people, what percentage have responded?
I can tell you that in 12 minutes, 65 people did the survey on Tyler. It's been, I mean, they're continuing to do it, but I mean, it really is. Like, I know that we've talked about a certain percent that they have to have, but the only reason I even know about Tyler's is because I was looking at the process of what was going on at that point, and I put his in at 205, and at about maybe less than 220, he had 65 people that had already completed it.
And Tyler hadn't seen those. He hadn't seen those survey results yet.
I can't pull anybody's until we close the surveys, because it would be easy if I could do it automatic, but it doesn't work that way just because I have to close it out, because I can't let others come in once I pull the data.
And Sheila or someone at the district office doesn't see Tyler's survey results
That's
either.
not the intent.
And I've already told everyone, all the admins, that in order to see a teacher's survey from their students, they have to be with that teacher. That everybody in this district, it is locked. So no one can see anyone else's.
Gotcha.
So it's a constant, there's no, there's no way that Sheila, nor Jane Marie, nor anyone else can see Tyler's or anybody else.
Gotcha. Thank you, Jan.
It's very confidential right now anyway.
I appreciate it, Jan.
And it's going to stay that way.
Yes.
Because it's been tested.
Any other?
Sounds like it.
Any other questions? Okay. Anything else? Dr. Phillips?
Wet and Jan are going to do a brief. I asked them to show you the new Help the Hills website because we have taken the lead on helping them just with the design of it and the uploading of it. They have given us the information as well as the student app that our seniors presented to us. It wasn't just seniors. It was the youth. It was juniors and seniors through the youth leadership, and then our new Blackboard notification system.
And one thing about those surveys, and January, what you were talking about, my recollection is just kind of going back in my notes that we spent a fair amount of time, the board spent a fair amount of time talking about this process back in July. I think we had a work session.
We did. And then y'all approved the process, the 3 pillars, and what happens underneath each one. And there's the teacher one and then the leader one. And they were almost reflective on the expectation with the modification of what we would expect in a classroom teacher's evaluation as opposed to a leader or administrator.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and talk briefly about the notification system, since that came up as part of the discussion on surveys. And one of the things I would just add to what Jan was saying, that through the testing that we did by sending those survey notifications to parents, and through everything that we did with that, we actually found that the system worked exactly as it should. So that was a very good process for us, and so we're happy to report that the new notification system that is replacing Schoolcast is in place, and we're ready to start rolling it out. I wanted to show you this briefly about what administrators will see when they log into this, and it's a very, very simple process for them. They will have a login as principals or whomever we designate at the school to go in, create a message. This takes them to a very simple form that they can fill out and send whatever they need to, and then hit send from right there. And this can go send messages by phone, email, text message to our mobile app and to their school's website. And the reason that I'm showing you kind of the back end of the system is that previously, in order to do that, principals had to go to about 3 or 4 different places in order to post one message, and sometimes would take numerous clicks. It could take the better part of 15-30 minutes in order to send out something that's supposed to be a rapid notification. So this is a great improvement in terms of message efficiency and sending out and ensuring that the people who need to get our messages are going to get them. And one of the things that we're really excited about is that our schools that send daily announcements, like the high school, the middle schools as well, will be able to log into this and send messages with a nice polished template as well, so things will look very nice on mobile devices, on everybody's computers, and it'll be easy for folks to manage their subscription preferences all in one place there as well. So we're very, very excited about this. It's been just a privilege to collaborate with Jan and BB Galloway and Tim Lovelace on getting this in place and getting it going. As Sheila mentioned, the Help the Hills website is up and running now. It is at helpthehills.org. This is something that was a great development, a great idea that was presented out of some of the more recent Help the Hills meetings that we've had. Just a desire for all of the agencies and the entities that are pouring into Help the Hills to have one location where parents and families could go get resources and information and help in the fight against substance abuse. And so we've created that. This is a beginning process, but this is going to develop over time, I think, into a really, really good community resource where you're going to see a lot of different agencies and organizations putting information into this.
So one thing this was shown at the town hall meeting that the mayor hosted, and Julie Ellis pulled down on the resources tab, which I had no idea that these had even been videoed. But all of the presentations that have happened over the last couple of years, many at Vestavia Methodist, what a great resource, I think, for parents to be able to look and see, Dale Wisely and some of these other folks that the Norris family, and just to be able to click on that and see those videos over the last 2 years, I guess.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And we just posted the meeting from Monday night on there as well for folks who didn't make it. So great meeting. One last thing I wanted to mention too is Dr. Phillips just mentioned, Jan and I had the opportunity to meet with a group of students in the youth leadership program. Kim, make sure I'm saying these names right. Sloan Ziverink, Lucy Ankenbrandt, Ray Brown, and Ryan Hernandez presented to us. They called us in and said, we want you to come in and we've got an idea that we want to show you. Great presentation, and just a stellar presentation on the development of a mobile app exclusively for students at Vestavia Hills High School to plug in to everything that's going on at the school. They can get their calendar of events in one place, college and career resources, those things that the counselors are so faithfully putting into the scholarship bin and the opportunities bin, the athletic schedules, the bell schedules, lots of great resources and information, notifications from club sponsors, coaches, principals, APs. We're really excited. This was their idea. They came up with all of this on their own, and I have to say it's one of the finest presentations that I could have ever imagined seeing. It was outstanding. We got on the phone as soon as we left the high school in that meeting and talked to our Blackboard account representative, and he said, let's do it. So we are going to get that rolling very soon. And one of the great things I asked our account representative with Blackboard if he knew of any other school systems in Alabama that had anything like this, and he said that we almost certainly would be the first. And then he did say to me, I know Mountain Brook doesn't have it. So, we're good. But we're hoping to bring them back in maybe late next month, certainly no later than the end of the school year, to present this in person to you when it's ready to go.
And this app will look very similar to the one that we already have, the Vestavia Hills City School app. When they approached us, though, they said they wanted an app that was for them. They said, we don't feel like that our district app is for the schools, for the kids.
For the students. Yeah.
And so it's going to be great because they'll be able to select seniors, and all the information behind that part of it will be for just the seniors, and and everything else. So I think that it was amazing what they said to us. And in fact, before we left, we told them, we'll do it. You just let us know what all you want on it, and we'll make it work.
That's exciting, and as I think about of course you were instrumental with this as well, just getting the district's app, that I think we were the first district to have that mobile app available in the fashion that we did, that had that so much information. Now we'll be the first district to have a students-focused
It won't be long before we own Blackboard.
Well, and I think this app was part of the project that the youth leadership kids did called the Possible Project, and came up with this idea, like you're saying, of themselves. I mean, came up with this, and that's great that they followed up with you all to push the ball forward.
It's just a
class. Those 4 representatives
right.
will done later to flesh out some details, but that whole, there were 30 kids involved in that.
Just incredible that they are thinking so carefully and intentionally about in improving communication with their own peers, and doing it in a way that nobody else is doing yet. So it's very exciting.
We'll be the first.
Absolutely.
And we wanted it to be very professional looking for them. Like, we could have had anybody make an app, anywhere, but we wanted it to be professional, so that's why we carried it back to Blackboard and said, we want our high school kids to have what our district has.
That's great. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. That's all I have.
All right. Open the meeting for public comment. If you do have comment, please limit those comments to items we covered on the agenda for tonight. Kimberly, yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to announce publicly about the upcoming board vacancy.
Thank you.
We're very sorry that Mark's going to be rolling off. I know he's not so sorry. Well, he is, but he's not. The
This crowd will be
applications.
celebrating after, these guys will be celebrating.
That's not true. Okay, well, maybe Jerry.
Question.
The applications will be received through April 10th and at 5 p.m. That's when the application period closes. And there is one board vacancy. And the application information can be found on the public notices page on the city website. In addition to the application itself, there's some interesting and helpful information to help people prepare for their interviews. One of the items there is some information that Mark shared with me and some others folks who showed up for a conversation with him about things that he's learned from his time, his service on the board. And I've already had people tell me that they found that to be very helpful, so I appreciate the time that Mark took to meet with us for that.
Glad to.
One of the things that was on the agenda tonight, the main thing, the facilities update, I just wanted to say that that I hope as you consider the 6th through 9th grade options 3 or 4 that included that alignment, that you will take into careful consideration the effect that it has on extracurriculars, athletics and extracurriculars, and that you will do not just what we can afford, but what is best for students. My children will not be affected by that. I have one in 10th grade right now, so that's not going to affect me personally, but I've had people come to me and express their reservations about having athletics, having joint 9th grade athletics, and having Liberty Park folks have to travel to get to those. So just wanted to mention that as a concern that I've heard. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that I hope that I understand that we're making decisions about what we can afford now with the money that we have to spend now, and that the board will continue to keep an eye on future growth, but especially to keep an eye on the growth as it pertains to the demographer projections, and to ensure that, that those projections are accurate and that we're not outstripping the growth that they've projected. I know that you're still waiting on the subdivision yield analysis. I attended the Liberty Park Homeowners Association meeting that happened last week. And there's some, of course, nothing is final until contracts are signed and construction starts, but there's some pretty significant commercial development that's happening in Liberty Park and is projected to happen in the very near future. And I do feel that this is going to drive our residential development significantly, and I know that you've been in close contact with the city and that they provided that information to the demographer, so hopefully that's been included in that. But I'm concerned about the growth, and I want to make sure that we don't get ourselves in the situation that we're in now where it's an emergency and we haven't adequately planned for years in the future so that we can have the money that we need to pay for a second high school when and if that becomes an eventuality. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
Oh, and one other thing, in Liberty Park, the city had been asked to address a safety concern on Sickert Hollow Road in regard to carpool for both of our schools out there, and we formed a task force. Casey Pierce and Ty Arundel and our city departments, the police department and public works, have all met and have come up with a solution that we believe will work without spending $500,000 to $1 million to add turn lanes on Sickert Hollow. We are going to be trying that out April 3rd, which is the first Monday after spring break. So we are hopeful that this will work, but we appreciate the cooperation of our schools and their support in helping the city to address that safety concern. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Kimberly. Appreciate that. Any other public comment? All righty. Have a good evening. Thank you all.